Good evening from the State of Kuwait. Welcome to the 7 o'clock news for Thursday, the 4th of December 2014. I'm Dalia Badran with the headlines for tonight. The National Assembly Speaker holds talks with Speaker of the Jordanian Senate and his accompanying delegation. The First Deputy Premier and Foreign Minister heads to Somalia on top of an Arab ministerial delegation on a one-day official visit. The Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe holds a first round of talks on the conflict in Ukraine. Gunmen shoot their way into Chechnyan capital Grozny, leaving as many as 19 people dead. Hello and welcome. The National Assembly Speaker Marzouk Ali Al-Ghanem held talks today with Speaker of the Jordanian Senate Abdulraouf Al-Rawabda and his accompanying delegation. The talks covered bilateral parliamentary relations and means of strengthening them and discussed the coordination mechanism between both parliaments in international forums. The talks also dealt with the latest political and security developments in the region, in addition to the Syrian refugees profile and efforts exerted by the Jordanian Kingdom in sheltering them. The meeting was attended by MPs Hamad Saif Al-Hershani, Faisal Al-Shaya, Abdullah Al-Tamimi, Abdul Rahman Al-Jiran, Abdul Hamid Dashti, Saud Al-Hiraji, Abdullah Al-Mayuf, Saif Al-Azmi, Saadun Hamad Al-Ataibi, and Sultan Al-Ghadaim. Following the talks, the National Assembly Speaker hosted a luncheon in honor of Al-Rawabda and his accompanying delegation that comprised a number of Senate members, including the Senate's First Deputy Speaker, Faisal Al-Faiz. The First Deputy Premier and Foreign Minister Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid Al-Hamad Al-Sabah left the Sudanese capital Khartoum, heading to the Federal Republic of Somalia on top of an Arab ministerial delegation on a one-day official visit. The delegation is scheduled to meet in the Somali capital Mogadishu with His Excellency the President of Somalia, Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud, and a number of senior Somali officials in order to emphasize the Arab solidarity with the Somali development and people and support all efforts to restore security and stability throughout Somalia and to promote its prosperity. The one-day official visit is part of Kuwait's presidency of the current 25 Arab Summit. The First Deputy Premier and Foreign Minister had headed Kuwait's delegation that took part in the Second Arab-Russian Cooperation Forum. The forum was held to discuss ways to boost Arab-Russian relations in all areas that serve cooperation, coordination, and partnership prospects between the two sides, in addition to the latest developments in the Middle East and a number of regional and international issues. Sheikh Sabah Al-Khalid also met with His Excellency the Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir, where they discussed the overall relationship between the two countries and its future prospects. Kuwait's 5th annual convention on the occasion of the International Day of People with Disabilities recently kicked off with wide local, regional, and international participation from specialists in the field. This comes as Kuwait enjoys a leading role in the terms of issuing legislations on looking after people with disabilities, better referred to sometimes as people with special needs. More on this report by Hiba Abdurrahman.
Under the patronage of His Highness the Emir, Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, Kuwait's 5th annual convention on the occasion of the International Day of Persons with Disabilities kicked off.
It's a great honor for me to represent His Highness Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber, the Emir of the State of Kuwait, in an important event that coincides with the International Day for the Disabled in Kuwait. It's also a great honor to have heard the representative of the United Nations, His Excellency Ambassador Mubashar from the UNDP, announce and state that Kuwait is regarded very highly by the United Nations and in the forefront of countries that has provided for the disabled, and it's a great pleasure to be amongst my friends and brethren of the disabled who are integral members of Kuwaiti society and who are viewed no differently because of their disabilities.
One of the important things, I think, to TGI and to all of us worldwide is to be sure that our teachers, who are so dedicated, are trained to the high expectations to really support in high-quality ways students with disabilities.
This annual event, which extends for 3 days, manifests the great attention by the state higher leadership to this category of Kuwaitis. The event underscores Kuwait's keenness on whatever could help alleviate sufferings of the disabled, as well as taking advantage of their capabilities and talents, so that they can play due role in building the future of their country. This conference, held for the 5th successive year, seeks to convey a host of messages, topped with carrying on with humanitarian activities following the example set by His Highness the Emir. Other messages are directed to parents who do the hard job, caring for the disabled kids, and legislative and executive officials to interact with this special category of the society, not only through issuance of laws, but also qualification and offering proper jobs to make life easier and help them emerge in the society. With the United Nations theme for the year 2014, Sustainable Development, the Promise of Technology, Kuwait's 5th convention on the occasion of the International Day of Persons with Disabilities started its activities that are full of 3 days workshops, specialized discussion panels. From Araya Ballroom in Courtyard Marriott Hotel, I am Heba Abdurrahman reporting for English News.
Thank you, Heba. Smoke was seen rising over Kobani today as the battle for control of the strategic border town continued. Kurdish fighters of Kobani, backed by a small number of Iraqi Peshmergas and Syrian rebels, are locked in what they say is a fight to the end against the so-called Islamic State group. Meanwhile, a monitoring group said at least 19 Syrian soldiers and militiamen were killed when the IS attacked one of the government's last remaining strongholds in the country's east. The IS has been gradually consolidating control of Syria's oil-producing Deir el-Zur province this year, but regime forces have been holding a military airbase there. The Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said the IS launched its attack on the base after detonating a suicide car bomb at a nearby building where government fighters congregated. IS fighters shelled the airbase and other areas under government control. Israeli authorities approve a budget of $12.5 million for an East Jerusalem settlement of Abu Ghneim Har Homa, built on the lands of Jerusalem and Beit Lahem. The move was condemned by the Palestinian Authority, which saw it as a new escalation. From Ramallah, Fatma Abdul Karim has more.
50 million shekels, or almost $12.5 million, were granted by Israeli authorities for the illegal settlement of Har Homa, built on Mount Abu Ghneim between East Jerusalem and Bethlehem. The money is allocated for beautifying the settlement, according to the Jerusalem municipality, by enhancing its infrastructure and gardening its own open spaces ahead of further expansion plans against international law and norms.
No
matter what the Israeli government did or do to the Israeli settlements, but they cannot hide the ugly face through its declaration to be the 3rd country in the world which lists its own citizens according to their religion.
The Palestinian Authority saw this move as an escalation in the already tense situation, defying the publicly declared will of world powers. The PA said Israel continues to take more steps towards settlement expansion, killing the geographical contiguity of the future Palestinian state and therefore killing the chances of international interventions for peace.
Israel is not interested anyway in having a Palestinian state next to its borders. Israel is working in all means to stop the declaration of a new Palestinian state. The reason behind these acts is that Israel considers West Bank, including East Jerusalem, its own back door.
Sources in the Palestinian authorities believe the U.S. would lead an international effort to pressure Israel and is likely to take steps this time against Israel's settlement expansion plans, even before the Arab draft resolution is submitted to the Security Council. Amid the heightening Arab-backed diplomatic rally, Israel continues to defy the world powers' will and continues to go unpunished for its unilateral actions and settlement expansion plans, and sends a message to the world saying that by that it is no clear business in bringing peace to the region. Fatma Abdul Karim, Kuwait TV, Ramallah, Palestine.
And thank you, Fatma. A senior U.S. general said that the IS has set up training camps in eastern Libya, and although they are not yet well developed, the U.S. is watching them closely. Army General David Rodriguez, who heads U.S. Africa Command, told reporters at the Pentagon that there may be a couple of hundred fighters undergoing training at the sites, but details are sketchy. Rodriguez called the establishment of the IS training camps in Libya a new development that does not amount to a large or well-organized effort. He did not say how many camps are operating. Asked whether the camps are a potential target for the U.S. airstrikes, Rodriguez said that the camps are not being targeted for the time being. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said today that Russia could rebuild its relations with the West if it calms the situation on the border with eastern Ukraine, where pro-Moscow separatists are fighting with KA forces. Kerry spoke at a meeting of the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe in the Swiss city of Basel, which includes both the United States and Russia as partners. Kerry met briefly with the Ukrainian Foreign Minister Pavlo Klimkin, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, and Georgian Foreign Minister. Lavrov said Russian military experts are working to reach an agreement on the withdrawal of heavy artillery from eastern Ukraine. In Russia, President Vladimir Putin, during an annual speech, warned Russians of hard times ahead and accused Western governments of seeking to raise a new Iron Curtain around Russia. However, Kerry said the West does not intend to isolate Russia.
The United States and countries that support Ukraine's sovereignty and rights do not seek confrontation. It is not our design or desire that we see a Russia isolated through its own actions. In fact, we are convinced that Moscow could rebuild trust and relationships if it simply helps to calm turbulent waters.
Gun battles today in the capital of Russia's Republic of Chechnya left 10 police officers and at least 9 militants dead after 2 buildings were stormed. Security officials said the militants traveling in 3 cars entered the republic's capital, killing 3 traffic police at a checkpoint. Officials said the militants then occupied the 10-story press house in central Grozny. It was later destroyed by fire, killing 6 gunmen. They said more gunmen were found in a nearby school and security forces were sent to discharge them. The fighting broke out hours before Russian President Vladimir Putin gave his annual State of the Nation address in Moscow. In his address, Putin said he was confident that local Chechnyan forces were capable of dealing with the rebels who he suggested were receiving support from abroad. Delegates from more than 50 nations held talks in London today intended to boost Afghanistan's prospects after foreign combat forces withdrew this month. Aid agencies working in Afghanistan are urging the international community to make long-term financial commitments or risk seeing the country collapse. The conference comes after a recent increase in attacks by the Taliban. Afghani President Ashraf Ghani, who took power in September, has vowed to bring peace after decades of conflict. He is expected to use the conference to seek endorsement for his plan for a transformation decade from 2015 to 2024 and guarantees that troops withdrawals will not be quickly followed by cuts in financial aid. Nigeria sent 250 medics into Ebola-hit zones today as part of the African Union's emergency response program. The medics who have helped contain Ebola in their own country are going to help their counterparts in Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea, joining teams on the grounds that have already been deployed by the AU. A member of the AU response on Ebola said the AU has already deployed about 90 specialized people who are on the field in these countries. Oni Michawali, who has just retired from government service, has also offered to join the fight against the virus. This is the first time that Nigeria has deployed such a large number of medical workers outside the country, and they are prepared should any of the volunteers become infected. The Nigerian government has also offered to treat any healthcare volunteer who contracts the virus in the line of duty, whether they are Nigerians or not. The government's Department of Tourism and Culture in Jakarta, Indonesia, held Jakarta Tourism, a roadshow to promote the Indonesian capital as premier tourist destination. The roadshow, which was held at the Crown Plaza Hotel and at the Avenues Mall, drew good response from visitors. Many hoteliers and tour operators, along with Garuda Airlines, the national carrier of Indonesia, participated in the event. Here is more on the event in this report by Salim Al-Kandari.
The promotion of the tourism sector for Jakarta continues to be done by the Department of Tourism and Culture Department through various promotional activities, both in the form of cultural performances up to a roadshow.
This is the business to consumer or consumer show. We're trying to get as many as awareness from local people here in Kuwait to come over to Jakarta and even finally at the end they will come to Jakarta and be our tourists. We do this show oftenly, but we move from one country to the others. And this is not our first time actually. We did it on 2010. And the response was very good, and here we are back again for second time in Kuwait to promote Jakarta as a tourist destination.
This is one of the events that we try to promote Indonesia, especially Jakarta. This is not the first event that we did it here in Kuwait. This is last April we have the Indonesian fashion show as well. So we do this regularly every year.
Okay, the event is that we come here just to, we want to show what we have in Jakarta tourism.
The aim is to maintain the image of Jakarta as a tourist destination and increase the role of the tourism industry in Jakarta, both in the aviation sector, hospitality, entertainment, or tour operator.
This was Jakarta's Roadshow 2014. It is to promote for the tourism in Indonesia and especially the capital Jakarta. From Grand Avenue, this is Salim Kandari reporting for the English News.
Thank you, Salim. At the end of this week's trading at Kuwait Stock Exchange, all indices closed today's session with slight gains. KSX 15 recorded 1,110.29 points, gaining 0.41 points. The price index reached 6,776.09 points, earning 0.65 points, and the weighted index closed at 456.55 points, rising by 0.12 points. And finally, tonight's Sciencescape Laila recently hosted Korean Movie Night under the patronage of His Excellency the Ambassador of Korea and in collaboration with Kuwait Korean Diwania. The evening event offered film fans a chance to see South Korean films popular in their home country. The event attracted a wide audience of people, some veterans and others enjoying the Korean film genre for the first time. At Sciencescape, Laila, reporter Badriya El Saleh brings us the story.
People gathered to see the sights and sounds of Korean Movie Night. Organized by the Embassy of Korea here in Kuwait, the event is in line with the Embassy's desire to share Korean culture with the people of Kuwait.
We selected 2 Korean movies, which could be very interesting to Kuwaiti people, Kuwaiti youth. I'm sure I just watched the first movie and it was quite interesting. So I'm sure the Korean and not only the Kuwaitis and other international people enjoy it. Yes, and then this is the part of our embassy cultural program. As you know, the last week we have a Korean Kuwaiti Diwania, which we introduced the traditional Korean cultural event to Kuwaiti people. So this is kind of a series of the cultural event to introduce the Korean. This time is to introduce Korean movies to Kuwaiti people.
The evening featured 2 films, a comedy called Papa that tells the story of a talent manager who, through a contract marriage, suddenly finds himself a single father with 6 widely different children. The second film, Secretly Greatly, stars up-and-coming heartthrob Kim Soo-hyun, who plays a North Korean spy infiltrating South Korea as a village idiot. Upon its release in 2013, the film broke several box office records in South Korea, including the highest single-day opening for a domestic film, most tickets sold in one day for a domestic film, and the fastest movie to reach the 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, and 4 million marks in audience number, among other awards.
I'm sure it will be very interesting, and then the Kuwaiti people enjoy the Korean, just the first movie. So sooner or later we're gonna have a second movie, so which is also quite interesting to the people. Yes.
The evening events are part of ongoing efforts by the Korean Embassy to collaborate with Kuwait Korea Diwania to prepare new and active cultural learning activities to not only share Korean culture with Kuwait, but also encourage the community to learn more about the culture themselves. At Sciencescape, Layla, I'm Badriya Saleh, reporting for the English News.
For a chance to see our reports again, please visit our YouTube channel at MOI Kuwait News. Before we end, here is a quick reminder of today's headlines. The National Assembly Speaker holds talks with Speaker of the Jordanian Senate and his accompanying delegation. The First Deputy Premier and Foreign Minister heads to Somalia on top of an Arab ministerial delegation on a one-day official visit. The Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe holds a first round of talks on the conflict in Ukraine. Gunmen shoot their way into Chechnyan capital Grozny, leaving as many as 19 people dead.